Well, welcome everybody. I'm Chris Beytes, editor of GrowerTalks and Green Profit magazines and the e-newsletter Acres Online, and I am going to be your host for the next hour or so as we tackle today's timely topic, an agronomic approach to spring pest management. Now I say timely because I know you're filling your greenhouses up with plants, and with plants, unfortunately, come insects and diseases, pretty much as sure as death and taxes, but we are here to offer relief. And I say we because, as usual, I'm not the expert on the topic. I know how to attract pests, and you can ask my wife, sometimes I am a pest, but as far as killing them, controlling them, we need a specialist, and she is Nancy Rechcigl, Technical Field Manager for Syngenta. Welcome, Nancy.
Hi, Chris.
So, Nancy, one of the fun things about a webinar is that, you can present it from anywhere that you can get an internet connection. So what particular beach do you happen to be broadcasting from today?
Oh, I'm laying out on Anna Maria Island in outside of Bradenton, Florida.
Beautiful. Working on the tan. Perfect. But you are in Bradenton, Florida, and I know you're not on the beach. You are working hard. Just to let the folks at Syngenta know, she's always that tan because she lives in Florida. So, and what exactly does a technical field manager do?
Well, Chris, I provide technical support and training on Syngenta products to the field, our customers, our distributors, as well as our internal sales team. I also assist with new product development and label expansion activities, and this includes trials, getting the data from those trials and putting it into PowerPoints and training items, reviewing and editing product labels, and developing some of the tech bulletins and brochures on our products so that people know how to use them.
In other words, you have no time for the beach based on that. You spend all your time in the greenhouse, it sounds
Actually,
like.
this is true. I spend very little time at the beach. I need to get there more often, for sure.
All right. Well, okay. And who am I? Well, I already told you that one. I am... That's me, broadcasting live from the 188th floor of the Ball Publishing World Headquarters. Now, I've already gotten one message from Oscar asking, hi, is anyone talking? He can't hear us, and there might be another person or two. I'm hoping that Oscar, even though he can't hear me, he can read this. I should put in there, Oscar, for audio. You'll need to click communicate at the top menu bar. See if he can't hear me, but I'm hoping he's reading this right now. There's always a few folks who miss that message at the beginning. I'll let him read that, and hopefully we'll get to him there. And I'll send him a quick little typo here, or a message in a second. If you have questions as we go along for Nancy, you can use the chat area or the Q&A area. There's two different spots there. Whichever is easier for you on your system, and we'll get to them as we go along if it pertains to what we're talking about, or we'll have a little time there at the end. If you have to leave off from the webinar for whatever reason, it will be archived, probably within an hour or so of when we end. Certainly by tomorrow, but we'd like to do it sooner. That's at the same place you registered, ballpublishing.com/webinars. And I think that's pretty much it. The next slide, Nancy, is going to be yours. You all set?
I'm ready to go.
All right. Take it away.
Okay. Today we're going to talk a little bit about building an agronomic program and having an agronomic approach to spring bedding plant production. So next slide, please. So what defines your success? Maybe it's being recognized for producing a high-quality crop, shipping products on spec and on time, having 10% or less shrink, or perhaps it's the economic efficiencies you've employed at your facility. And of course, keeping your boss happy is always key. No matter how you define your success, it does not just happen on its own. A successful growing season is the result of careful planning and preparation for the expected and, to some extent, the unexpected. One way you can prepare is by having an agronomic program as part of your overall production plan. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so an agronomic program is a strategy to manage the production of a crop. It has many components to it, and it takes into account the different problems that a crop may encounter. While agronomic programs are typically focused on preventing damage due to insect and disease problems, cultural and nutritional requirements are also an important part of your agronomic program as well. In this illustration, the octagons represent the primary components of an agronomic program, while the long ovals represent action items that are also involved in this process. Today, our discussion will focus on building an agronomic program based on the disease and pest management components. So why is it important to have a strategy or agronomic program? Quite simply, because bad things happen to good plants. And often it is the unexpected that occurs that causes major disruptions to production and to your shipping schedules. This problem that you see here with marigolds was the result of keeping the planting media too wet, as it did contain rice hulls, which really led to the root and stem rot. While there was a biological incorporated into the planting medium, there were no other protectant fungicides applied to this crop, which may have prevented or reduced the size of this loss. Next. So in this example, this is boxwood cuttings that were quickly going down in propagation. This was not caused by some of the new diseases that you're hearing about, boxwood blight. This was actually caused by a systemic infection of fusarium that had been present in their field stock. So having a good agronomic program is especially important if you grow your own stock plants or take cuttings from your field production on plants that you are finishing. Now, an important feature of an agronomic program is that it contains a built-in resistance management strategy that incorporates 2 to 3 products with different modes of action for each target problem. This is particularly crucial in the ornamental industry, where production can occur 52 weeks of the year and resistance can really be an issue. Positioning these products in the rotation based on their strengths is really an important component to consider when putting these programs together, and also to rotate among these products based on their label recommendations. So how to position these plant protection products in your program is also an important consideration. It's important to have a good understanding of the characteristics or special features that the products you are selecting have and how they work. Do they have systemic, translaminar, or contact activity? What is the length of control they provide? Are there any regulatory requirements that need to be considered regarding REI, PPE, or yeast limits? And it's also important to keep in mind to modify your treatment interval to match your disease pressure and the time of year. And of course, keep good records for future crops because you know you're going to need it next year. This is an example of a template or worksheet that can be used when building your agronomic program. In this case, we're building our agronomic program for a finished crop of impatiens with a crop time ranging from 6 to 12 weeks, depending upon the pot size. We have identified the primary disease and insect targets, and also even some secondary targets like the aphids. We have listed several control options with different modes of action for each target, at least 2 to 3. And I've also listed our pH and EC requirements along with my fertility plan. This serves as your framework for your agronomic program. Now, there are several products in this program that are relatively new to the ornamental market that you may not be familiar with. So I would like to take a few moments to review some of their unique features and strengths so you can have a better understanding of how they are positioned in the programs I will talk about today. Syngenta is a new protectant fungicide for control of OOMYCETE diseases caused by downy mildew and PHYTOPHTHORA pathogens. It contains the active ingredient OXATHIAPIPROLIN, which is not only a new active ingredient for the ornamental market, but also in a new class of chemistry. Syngenta has a 4-hour REI and no signal word, which indicates it has excellent worker safety. And it's also systemic. You can use it as a drench, and also has translaminar activity when applied as a spray. What you'll see with Syngenta is that it provides some very long residual protection at very low use rates. So the Syngenta fungicide is in a new chemical class called piperidinylthiazole, and it's in the subclass isoxazolines, and it's designated in FRAC group U15. It has a unique mode of action that prevents the oxysterol binding protein in the oomycete pathogens from binding to molecules it would normally transport around a cell. This disrupts many processes within the cell, such as signaling, maintaining cell membranes, and the formation of lipids. Syngenta targets oomycetes at several different stages in the life cycle, but particularly interferes with sporulation, germination, and initial infection of the host, thereby reducing the opportunity for the disease cycle to develop or progress.
Nancy, how is it applied?
You can apply this product as a spray or as a drench because it's systemic, so it does move up from the roots into the canopy for control of downy mildew diseases, for instance. You can also apply it as a spray for foliar PHYTOPHTHORA and downy mildew, or as a drench for controlling PHYTOPHTHORA, crown and root rots.
Oh, okay, excellent.
So studies have shown that OXATHIAPIPROLIN will move into developing tissue that was not previously exposed to the spray treatment, providing protection of new emerging growth. In this study, a single application of OXATHIAPIPROLIN was applied to the tomato plants. They were challenged with repeated inoculations of PHYTOPHTHORA infestans every 5 to 7 days following the treatment. You can see that at 17 and 35 days after treatment, the new growth is still protected and looking good. Now, similar results have been observed in ornamental trials as well. In this trial, an aggressive strain of PHYTOPHTHORA from Florida, known to have resistance to MEFENOXAM or Subdue, was tested against several different OOMYCETE fungicides currently on the market. The VINCA plants were sprayed once and inoculated the next day. Severe disease occurred in the inoculated check as well as in several treatments, but only the Syngenta and the MURAL was providing complete control 22 days after treatment. Strong residual activity is also observed in downy mildew trials. In this trial, the treatments were applied as a spray twice on a 14-day interval. Now, while this is considered a broad interval for fighting an aggressive disease like impatiens downy mildew, it helped us to understand the strength and residual activity of Syngenta at different use rates. Strong residual activity has also been observed in drench trials. Being systemic, Syngenta proves to be a useful rotational tool in the battle against downy mildew. You can see in this trial, Syngenta is providing over 52 days of complete control of impatiens downy mildew.
And Nancy, any diseases you can think of, major ones that Syngenta does not control?
Well, it does not have activity. While it's a fungicide with activity on OOMYCETE diseases, it does not have strong activity on Pythium. So while you may get a little bit of suppression of Pythium diseases with this product, it really is a primary fungicide for downy mildew and just PHYTOPHTHORA diseases.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know. Thanks.
The other fungicide I'd like to talk a little bit about today is MURAL. MURAL is a new broad-spectrum fungicide that leverages the systemic performance of Heritage with outstanding protection of the newest SDHI fungicide called solatinol. MURAL has both systemic and translaminar activity and provides broad-spectrum control of both foliar and soil-borne pathogens. It's very effective at low use rates. You could see foliar sprays from 4 to 7 ounces and soil drenches applied at 2 to 3. What you'll see with MURAL is some enhanced and longer residual protection against some of the more difficult diseases, such as anthracnose, botrytis, powdery mildew, and even Pythium and PHYTOPHTHORA. The contribution of solatinol in MURAL can be seen through enzymatic benchmarking studies that was conducted across several different pathogens. You can see here we have septoria, botrytis, and rhizoctonia. These graphs show the amount of active ingredient needed to inhibit the enzyme succinate dehydrogenase by 50%. SDHI stands for succinate dehydrogenase inhibitor, and that succinate dehydrogenase is an enzyme that's needed for fungal cell respiration. When this enzyme is inhibited, the fungal cell can't continue to function, and you can't continue to have fungal growth. So along the bottom are some current SDHIs that are on the market in products, or some that are currently being evaluated. Solatinol is represented by the blue bar, and as you can see, solatinol is more active at low use rates compared to the other SDHIs. This translates really to strong protection and longer residual control. Now there's some in here you may be familiar with. Boscalid is in the product Pageant, and fluoxyperoxide is in the new fungicide Orchestra. All having good control, but again, solatinol requiring very little in order to be effective.
Nancy, we've got a question going back one product to Segovis. Jan
Sure.
wants to know if it can be used on greenhouse-grown tomatoes. I think you showed some tomatoes, right? Didn't you?
Well, yes, and actually that was really an efficacy trial that was conducted in the UK. No, we do not have Segovis labeled for use on vegetables. It's strictly ornamentals.
Oh, sorry, Jane.
Sorry. But we do have Macora and Mural that are registered for tomatoes, for tomato plants that are being grown in a greenhouse for resale purposes.
Okay. Well, now let's be clear. That would be tomato young plants for gardeners versus finished fruit greenhouse tomatoes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. These would be plants that would be sold, in pots or containers to the gardener.
Right, but not on a tomato crop.
No.
Okay, so that may still let Jan out, because I think that's what she's talking about when she says greenhouse-grown tomatoes.
Oh, sorry, Jan.
Yeah. Biologicals, possibly. But, okay, we'll continue on here.
Okay. Well, the combination of Heritage or azoxystrobin with solatinol really gives some outstanding botrytis control at very low use rates. You can see here the performance of Mural when it's applied as a spray at 4 ounces and 7 ounces compared to the inoculated check. Some very good growth of the plant and really control of the botrytis infection. And Mural really does outperform Heritage as a spray treatment. So we're really excited about its protection. Stronger residual activity can also be seen with control of powdery mildew diseases. Here you see Mural at the 4-ounce use rate applied as a spray. The sprays were applied on a 4-day interval. And you can see this was powdery mildew on verbena. Verbena is a crop that tends to get powdery mildew problems. And you can see Mural at the 4-ounce rate is holding strong when Heritage is breaking. Mural also performs well on downy mildew diseases. In this trial, again, the sprays were applied on a 14-day interval and had comparable performance to other OOMYCETE fungicides such as Segway and Subdue. Now in this trial, it should be noted that the Subdue treatment was applied as a drench on a 30-day interval. These were applied to 3-gallon knockout roses, and we all know that when you have roses, you're going to have issues with downy mildew. So you can see some really good performance there with the Mural. Another fairly new product that's included in the agronomic rotations is MAINSPRING GNL. This is a broad spectrum insecticide that provides protection and control of some of the key ornamental pests that you see pictured here. It does have a unique mode of action. So how does MAINSPRING GNL work? Mainspring contains the active ingredient cyantraniliprole, and it's in the IRAC group 28. That's a new IRAC group, the diamides. It works primarily through ingestion, although it does have some limited contact activity. So shortly after it's ingested by the insect, the pest stops feeding, becomes paralyzed, and mortality generally occurs within 2 to 7 days. Longer, obviously, for pests that are bigger, such as like Japanese beetle. But feeding stops immediately, which helps reduce the amount of damage that you see. So Mainspring acts like a shield. It basically stops pest populations from building to damaging levels. It also offers a systemic alternative to the neonic chemistries. It is compatible with many biological control agents, and it's a product that you can use and spray on a 14-day interval. This is not a product that needs to be applied on a 7-day. It does have some translaminar activity as a spray when it moves in, and so it does stay in that leaf, providing some of that residual protection. You can also apply it as a drench. This product also has a 4-hour REI and no signal word, indicating excellent worker safety profile.
Cheryl wants to know if it's available and labeled in Canada, Nancy.
We are working on that right now.
As we speak, Cheryl, so
yes.
Be patient. Good.
And if you ask for it, you'll get it faster. So it's important to talk to your regulatory people.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah. So Mainspring does provide some extended protection as a drench. I have here 5 to 8 weeks, depending upon the rate, but really we are saying 8 weeks or longer with our drench applications now that we know exactly how to utilize it in order to get the best performance. It's also registered for use in landscape, so as a systemic soil treatment, you will get season-long protection with the rates that are listed. For spray applications, you generally see 14 to 21 days of good protection. 14 days for aphids, thrips, whitefly, and leaf-eating beetles, and up to 21 days can be seen with caterpillars and leaf miner. So some really nice extended protection here.
Yeah, I love the 5 to 8 weeks. I'll ask the same question I did of the others. Do you know of anything it doesn't work against?
We're looking at armored scales right now in mealybug. We don't have trials on them, but we do have some indication that there might be some activity, so we're currently investigating that. But for your key ornamental pests, your thrips, your whitefly, your leaf miner, your caterpillars, lace bugs, leaf-eating beetles, and lepidopteran pests like caterpillars, Mainspring has some really excellent activity. So I just wanted to cover some important tips and things that you should know when applying Mainspring. Again, Mainspring works primarily through ingestion and does only have a little contact activity, and it does work like a shield. You should apply Mainspring when pest pressure is starting or when pests have historically been observed in the past. This is not the product to pull out when you're trying to knock down large populations, but if you get it on early, it truly acts like a shield. You will have very little insect damage or pest populations developing. You can apply it as a foliar spray. The spray rates are 4 to 8 ounces per 100 gallons, and generally we use 4 ounces in the greenhouse for our herbaceous crops, and 8 ounces can be used on some of the outdoor nursery crops that have tougher leaves. Again, the spray applications are recommended to be applied on a 14-day interval, and it does help to add a spreading type adjuvant to improve the spray coverage on the waxy and difficult to wet leaf surfaces. So definitely put an adjuvant with it. We, in our trials, have been using some capsule at 4 to 6 ounces, but test it with your adjuvant of choice. As a soil drench or injection, the use rates are 8 to 12 ounces per 100 gallon, and generally we've been using 8 ounces. It seems to work great, but there are some things that you need to know. The application should be made to moist soil or planting media, so irrigate a day or two before making the application. It does tend to bind also to the soil, so if soil is very dry, it won't move fully down through the soil profile. We also recommend that drench applications be applied 2 to 3 weeks after transplant or once the plants have rooted in, because really the more roots you have present, the more mainspring will be picked up and the longer residual protection you will see. And also when you're making your drench applications, target wetting at least 3/4 of the root zone. You may water in lightly after an application, but you want to get it down where the roots are because that's where it's going to get picked up.
All right. Now, Robert has a question, Nancy, but he threw me for a loop here because I don't know what he's asking. He asks if it's effective against or on Lygus, L-Y-G-U-S.
Actually, we're looking into that right now as well. That's another pest that's, I know, a problem in field production as well as some greenhouse operations, and we're investigating that right now. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some more information and data on that pest soon.
All right. Did you get that, Robert? I asked him privately via text, what's Lygus? And he replied, it's a hemipteran. And yes, thank you. That was really helpful. Then his other question, this is easy. Does adding sugar help efficacy? And I don't know if anybody's doing that sort of thing these days, are they?
Well, they have done it in the past to help with for thrips control, because the thrips like the sugar, they like the sweetness, as do mites, although this has no activity on mites at all. But for thrips, they tend to feed more, and so they ingest more of the AI, and then it helps with the mortality. With this product, no, you don't need it, but you do need an adjuvant, something like capsule or something to help spread it out and get it penetrating into that tissue. It just takes very little for the pest to ingest before it stops feeding. So they don't have to feed a lot in order to get their lethal dose. But basically, they stop feeding, and within minutes, they stop feeding, and then it really just takes some time for them to dry out and die. So basically, that's how that works.
Well, there you go. Robert and I both learned something today.
Keep the sugar for the tea. Okay, so protecting your crops from thrips is always important, particularly since we are full swing into the bedding plant season. The feeding scars that thrips create can negatively impact the quality of your crop and also threaten it with tospovirus transmission. Mainspring is a new tool that can be used as a spray or drench to protect the plants from thrips and keep populations from building to damaging levels. In this slide, you see Mainspring was applied as a drench to the right, to the plant on the right. The untreated is on the left, and you can easily see the scarring that was made from the thrips feeding. So whether you apply it as a spray or as a drench, you're going to get some excellent protection against thrips, western flower thrips, and chili thrips as well. VERBENA is another thrips magnet, and this is just another example that we did perform this trial. Plants were mixed together in the greenhouse. Plants were treated, and some plants were left untreated, and you can see the immature thrips feeding on the VERBENA leaf to the left, while the leaves on the right really have no feeding scars and no presence of the thrips. They just can't stay and establish. So Mainspring also provides some good control of the Melia whitefly, both B and Q biotypes. The drench applications can provide the extended protection that you need for longer crops, even under high pressure. Similar results can be seen in this trial conducted on hibiscus by Dr. Lance Osborne from the University of Florida at Apopka. In this trial, he compared 2 drench rates, the 8 and the 12-ounce drench rate, and a spray treatment at 6 ounces. and he looked at this over an 8-week period for control of the Q biotype. You can see here at 8 weeks, the 8-ounce drench is performing just as well as a 12-ounce drench, and again, that's 8 ounces per 100 gallons. The spray applications were applied twice on a 14-day interval, and also provided some really good protection on the plant for that period of time. Now, a bit unusual, but some of this product probably moved into the stem and also moved in to protect some of the new growth that was coming. In the next slide, you can see what these plants look like at the end of the trial. You can really see how the quality of the plant was impaired with the untreated control on the left versus the MAINSPRING drench on the right.
Well, that's a radical difference. Nancy, back to poinsettias, which you mentioned before. How might you use MAINSPRING in conjunction with imidacloprid for season-long whitefly control? Any thoughts?
Yes. So this would be used, I guess, in place of imidacloprid, particularly if some of the growers have requirements that they're not allowed to use the neonic insecticides any longer because of how they're being sold. But you would use this in place of that. You would apply MAINSPRING as a drench after pinch. I would say, 2 weeks or so after pinch, once you see, and very much like you would a neonic, you would use this product. And it will get into the root system, drench it down, and you'll get 8 or 9 weeks of really strong protection that should take you through really your entire poinsettia crop. This past year, actually over the past 2 years, we've had MAINSPRING in trials at the University of Florida, poinsettia trials, variety trials. And this year we were at 9 weeks and the plants were still looking really clean. So really nice replacement product for some of the neonic insecticides.
Excellent. And Robert's asking about an ag label for tomatoes from MAINSPRING.
I can't help him with that.
But
I will check.
He means the fruit. He means
right. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I'll have to check and get back to him on what would be appropriate.
All right, Robert. Send her an email. You'll get her email address at the very end, and just a reminder of your question, and she'll hook you up, I'm sure.
Okay. So rotations versus agronomic programs. Sometimes these terms are used interchangeably. So what's the difference? Well, rotations are typically focused on controlling a problem. You may have a rotation program for a disease problem like downy mildew, or an insect problem like thrips. And so on the left, you'll see an example of a suggested rotation that can be utilized for controlling thrips when populations are low to moderate, versus down to the right, where a different series of products are suggested to be used when populations are high. Now again, in this reference, the MAINSPRING is being listed as a spray treatment. So that would be a rotation. Then you have the agronomic program. Now the agronomic program is what you'll see in the table. They're broader and take into account the primary and secondary problems that can affect the crop, and it provides the framework for preventing these problems in production. Agronomic programs contain rotation programs within them and also contain the resistance management strategy as well. And it really takes a more proactive approach to management. So the table illustrates an agronomic program for controlling key greenhouse pests for greenhouse ornamental crops. So in this case, we're targeting aphids, thrips, and whitefly, and with the exception of the third column, leaf miner and caterpillars as well. So this rotation, you're pretty much covered. So the agronomic program is a strategy to manage the production of a crop. A well-structured program will consider how to best utilize the product's strengths and leverage modes of action at times when they will provide the maximum benefit. So in this case, you can see we have different crop times, 6 to 8 weeks, Some crops are 6 to 12 weeks or 6 to 14 weeks long. So I have positioned Avid in the beginning because I'm anticipating cuttings or plugs or some plants or liners coming in with eggs from either mites or whitefly, which often happen. If you have some pressure from aphids, you can throw some Endeavor in there for aphids. Then you have MAINSPRING listed as a spray if you have a crop time of 6 to 8 weeks, because 2 sprays will pretty much keep you covered. And then I've positioned the Conserve and the Azotin Avid at the end, if necessary, to control any thrips that may occur in the flowers. Again, positioning products based on their strength. Conserve and Avid and Azotin will work as a contact, while MAINSPRING is more of a product that you have to ingest and should be put on early. For 6 to 12 week crop, it's a longer crop time, so you may consider making an application of MAINSPRING as a drench in order to provide that residual control. Again, having the Conserve or Avid Azotin at the end for controlling thrips that may occur in the flowers. And again, 6 to 14 weeks on the 4th column is just positioned again a little bit later to provide that extended protection as the crop gets larger. The 3rd column shows how different sprays of different products can be utilized to accomplish the same thing.
Okay, and again, tell us which key greenhouse pests this chart covers.
So columns 1, 2, and 3 would cover aphids, whitefly, thrips, leaf miner, and caterpillars.
Okay, because I don't see that in the chart. I just want to make sure we had that recorded.
Okay. So here we have a program for controlling downy mildew in nursery crops. The program uses a systemic sandwich approach with a framework of 3 or more different modes of action. And you can see that the FRAC numbers are listed to the left. Systemic products with strong residual activity are applied and alternated with protectant fungicides and translaminar fungicides in between. Both types of products are important to assist with control and resistance management. In outdoor nursery production, where drench treatments may be difficult to perform due to plant spacing and acreage, the systemic sandwich approach really can be achieved the same with spray treatments. So here you see Subdue would be the systemic treatment, and Segovis is the systemic treatment, with Macora, a more translaminar protectant fungicide, sandwiched in between. MURAL can also be included in the rotation in place of Macora during periods of pressure from leaf spots or powdery mildew or rust diseases. A few years ago, when impatiens downy mildew was causing disruptions in the impatiens market, I put together a rotation program that could be used as an example for controlling downy mildew diseases in bedding plants and other herbaceous crops. Again, the program utilizes a systemic sandwich approach where systemic fungicides are applied as a drench at the beginning of production and then also at the end of production to help provide some extended protection in the landscape for the consumer. We're now going to take a look at this in a little bit more depth and see how we would address this with a full agronomic program. For this, I put the target diseases, which of course is downy mildew, but I did list some of the other pathogens and disease problems that could be a problem on this crop in addition to the downy mildew. So FRAC codes are positioned so they're not repeated too many times. And you've got, again, systemic products rotated and alternated with those of protectants. Next slide. So let's take a look at a template for impatiens. While impatiens downy mildew is one of the primary problems of this crop, let's expand this into a full agronomic program including some of the other problems that you may encounter. So for impatiens, obviously thrips and tospovirus transmission is a primary concern, but you may encounter some aphids from time to time, maybe even some mites, but that's even more rare. The disease target is really downy mildew, but it's also important to keep in mind that you could encounter some leaf spots such as alternaria or Polytotricum, anthracnose. Obviously, botrytis can be an issue during certain times of the year, and also even after shipping when you're trying to ship the product out. And then you have some root and stem rots, the Pythium, Phytophthora, and Rhizoctonia, that can also be a problem when you're trying to get plants established. I've also included the pH and EC targets as well as the fertility program for the impatiens again. So now, taking the lessons learned from research trials and the new products that have entered the market and addressing the issues that we've identified on the template, our agronomic program would look like this. The program still uses a systemic sandwich approach where we have systemic fungicides applied as a drench in the beginning and some translaminar activities or protectant fungicides applied in between. So you see I have Subdue because we know Subdue works as a drench to control the downy mildew. We have that combined with the thiophanate methyl, which we're getting our Rhizoctonia as well as our Pythium and Phytophthora. You have options there to spray MURAL and MAINSPRING if you have, for instance, problems with THRIPS. You want to make sure you keep those THRIPS populations down. MAINSPRING is a shield, so you've got to get it on early. And MURAL would be in there for perhaps some leaf spot control. Then you have Macora, and then back to MAINSPRING and MURAL if needed. And again, the sprays in between, these are all optional treatments to show you how to position these different products and frac codes to give the best of their ability to give you the best protection. Again, with the target diseases and pests listed to the right. As your crop pot size gets larger, your crop time gets larger, and so these are positioned out as you see. Now, with the 10-inch pot or larger, I'm now recommending a Segovis and MAINSPRING drench, and then you can eliminate many of the sprays afterwards. So let's take this as another example. Let's take a look at a program for miniature roses. This crop can also have a lot of different problems. Again, the purpose of the agronomic program is to provide a strategy for the successful production of this crop and to minimize the risk of any problems and improve the quality of the crop. So let's review this template. So for miniature roses, our target pest is going to be two-spotted spotter mites. And then also thrips certainly could happen in the middle, but certainly once you start to have some flower buds. You might get some additional secondary pests like aphids and whiteflies. And if you're doing outdoor production, this would be even for standard roses, you might get some Japanese beetle coming in on some of the regular standard or knockout roses. For disease targets, you've got downy mildew, powdery mildew and rust, and leaf spots like black spot and Cercospora can be a problem. Your root and stem rots and botrytis. So I've listed, again, choosing at least 2 to 3 different products to be used in a rotation program to help manage this. And what's important to look at is where some of these products overlap. You can see that we've got, Avid in here for mites and thrips. You're going to get some protection against aphids and whitefly. The same could be said with MAINSPRING, crossing over, providing protection over several different pest species. With the pathogens and like downy mildew, the powdery mildew and leaf spots, again, a very similar profile of products. So you're getting some double protection across a lot of the different problems that you can encounter. So this is what, if you built it out, what that program would look like. Again, in this case, these are miniature roses, so you might start with a drench. Oftentimes, you can even get liners of miniature roses in that already have downy mildew in them. So putting in a systemic treatment in the beginning is important to help control that. medallions in there to help with cylindrocladium, rhizoctonia, and fusarium. So that would be your application in the beginning. And again, focused on those key target pests and diseases that you see to the left. The different products are positioned to provide really based on the strengths and leverages those modes of action at a time when they will really provide the maximum benefit for you. Many of these treatments can be optional. You see, with miniature roses, you often put a pinch on them. So the week or treatment number 3.
Nancy, I did want to ask. Nancy, you still there? Oh,
yeah.
You're not advocating giving up scouting.
No.
Just spread that. Yeah, I want to make sure because it looks like, well, on week 1 I do this, week 2, week 3, no matter what. That's not the case here, right?
No, that is not the case. No, you still, if you go back to that original diagram, scouting and monitoring is very much a part of this agronomic program. This is just laying the framework for if I needed to make an application, what am I going to use and how should it be positioned to provide the maximum benefit. So for instance, spray, MURAL, it could even be treatment number. It doesn't have to be the week, but treatment number 2 or 3, if you saw that you had some leaf spot issues or you were worried about mites, you may elect to make that application of MURAL and Avid. After a pinch, you have a Daconil or Protect, which is like a diethane MURAL product. That helps. That's a great product, 2 products to spray after pinch to protect against fungal invasions after pinching. But that's an option. You don't have to do it. Certainly, we've got week number 5, Eagle or Macora. Eagle's in there to help with powdery mildew and leaf spots like black spot and Cercospora. But if you're not having pressure during that time with those problems, then you don't have to make the application. But you should keep in mind that fungicides are usually applied to protect a crop from getting a disease. And it's a lot easier, and really you use less money, less applications by putting on some preventive applications as opposed to trying to do a curative rescue treatment. Diseases like powdery mildew, the mycelium grows internally within the leaf. And so once that gets established in your crop, you can end up applying more spray treatments to clean it up as opposed to putting a few fungicide treatments on to protect it from the beginning. But you have to know your history of what you're seeing, what you've seen before in your greenhouse, or, what did the liners look like that you got in? Do they have problems? So no, I'm not.
Good.
Not advocating scouting. That should be the #1 thing that you do all the time.
I didn't want anybody to think we'd thrown IPM completely out the window or something.
No.
Back in time, 50 years.
No. Absolutely not. This slide just really shows you the difference of what a agronomic program would look like with some sprays versus drenches. So the first column has, again, kind of a similar outline, but you've got, during treatment number 4, you may be making a Segovis MAINSPRING drench application. Again, because of the longer crop time, you may elect to do that. Now, if you look at when that is applied, and I could point it out also on the other column, Subdue was applied week 1. Obviously, that's usually the first thing you put on. But that will hold for a good 4 weeks or longer. But usually after about 4 weeks, you're going to want to have another systemic put on that crop. And so that's why Segovis is positioned in that spot, in that slot, for controlling downy mildew. Now, if you elect to spray it, then you can look on the right column to see, again, what does it look like as far as some of the suggested treatment. And if you were to apply it as a drench, well, you can certainly eliminate some spray treatments. And, all of these spray treatments are really optional based on what your pressure is. But certainly you can definitely eliminate spray treatments if you apply some of these as a drench. Now, the positioning of these different products in these programs is really based on their unique strengths and characteristics, and also supporting research trial data. This was a recent trial conducted by Dr. FOLIAR She's at Tennessee State University, and she evaluated the control that drench treatments provide for controlling rose downy mildew. These were knockout roses grown in 10-inch pots, and so Subdue was in there at 2 ounces, Segovis at 1 and 3. Treatments were applied once and evaluated a month later. You can see that the systemic activity of these products really does provide some excellent control and protection against downy mildew when it's applied as a drench. So even as a standalone treatment, the drench applications, regardless of the use rate for Segovis, provided some excellent control. Now, if you look at the plant health benefit of these treatments, that could also be seen with an increase in the plant height and width compared to the untreated control. Now, the spray rotation, the strength of the systemic sandwich spray rotation was also tested at 2 different spray intervals, one at 7-day interval and one at a 14-day interval. And you can see the rotation of products is listed down below. That was what was applied either on a 7 or 14-day interval. In this trial, there was no significant differences seen between the 7 or 14-day application rotation. And again, the plant health benefits could be seen as a result of these treatments with an increase in plant height and fullness for those plants that were receiving the rotation. So again, the recommendations that are made in these programs have been tested to make sure that, again, we are positioning them products for their strengths and for, knowing how long the residual control is that they will provide.
Nancy, looking at the slight but visible difference between rotation 1 and 2, would you recommend rotation 1, the 7-day interval, just based on that, or is that almost statistically?
No, yeah, it's not
either one.
Yeah, it's not statistically. I mean, you're looking at 1 versus almost 2 leads. And nothing. I mean, there's no statistical differences between that. So, and that's why, oftentimes in production we get used to spraying on a 7-day. We want to spray on a 7-day. It makes us feel better. But that's because in the past, the older products we had to choose from had a shorter residual activity, and so you needed to do that. Today's products are built to last, and so that's reflected in these trials and in the programs that have been built.
Well, what does time say? It's kind of like, you don't have to change your oil in 1,000 miles anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, one last example. It wouldn't be bedding plant season if we didn't include something on Gerbers, a popular crop. So let's take a look at this. We've got a 6-inch Gerber, 10 to 12 week crop time. The target pest would be probably thrips, and with secondary pests being 2-spotted spider mites and some broad mite. Disease target, primary one would probably be powdery mildew. It could have some root and stem rot issues, and of course botrytis protection at shipping. And again, we have the pH and fertility targets also listed there. Again, tried to select at least 2 to 3 products to help with these problems that are listed. So let's take a look. So again, fairly easy program. We have the difference between the column in the middle, the 6-inch pot, versus the one that says 8 to 10. Obviously, an 8 to 10-inch pot is going to have a longer crop time. So again, recommending a drench treatment there as opposed to spray treatments, but you could use a spray treatment. And again, these products have some long-lasting activity. MURAL for powdery mildew will last 2 weeks, a good 2 weeks or more. So you could space those out. Eagle also has some good activity. The recommendation is apply on a 7 to 10-day interval. You have to be careful with Eagle because there is some growth regulation that you see with that active ingredient. So you want to be careful not to put on too much or too close so that the plants have the growth regulated effect. But certainly a nice robust program where you'll be protected. But again, definitely have to scout your crop and just be prepared. You want to be prepared to know what you're going to have on your Gerbers and protect them so that you can grow a high quality crop. So just in summary, you know, the agronomic program is a strategy to manage the production of a crop. A well-structured program will consider how to best utilize the product strengths and leverage the modes of action at times when they really will provide the maximum benefit. And so the end result should reduce problems, save time and resources on corrective actions, and help ensure the production of a high-quality crop so you could get top dollar. So the programs that we viewed in today's webinar and others are available online for review or download at the www.greencastonline.com/solutions. You can find a lot of great information there, or if not, contact me at Syngenta.
Well, excellent information, Nancy. But it is a lot to digest, and we do have a few questions.
Sure.
So let's, we've got a little bit of time to get to those. Let's see, Mary Beth wants to know how MAINSPRING works with beneficials. She specifically mentions Aromaceras for whitefly.
Yes. So we have good compatibility with Aromaceras and Encarsia. Because of the time limit, I couldn't show all the data, but I'm happy to share that with you if you want to contact me. It works very well with Swirsky and Aromaceras in an integrated program for controlling whitefly.
All right. How about MURAL and Segovis, in California? Registered?
Yes.
Both, okay. And MAINSPRING?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Beautiful. And then somebody wants to know if you have a per acre rate for MAINSPRING.
Yes, so you're limited to, I believe it's 32 ounces per acre as a maximum. So per application, I would say if you're making 2 applications per acre, it would be, you could make it at a 16-ounce rate. So that would be, well, 2 applications at a 16-ounce rate, or 4 applications at an 8-ounce rate as a spray. But 32 ounces per acre is your rate, is your maximum rate.
All right. And while she's giving those maximum rates, we're going to pop up this Syngenta legal disclaimer to help cover Nancy's posterior just a little bit there. So.
Thank you.
Okay, we got the questions. If you have any more questions, there's Nancy again, and there's her email address. It's nancy.rechcigl. If you wanted to know how to pronounce it, it's Rechcigl. Very easy, just like Beytes, Rechcigl, at Syngenta.com. And she's standing by 24/7, she told me.
I truly am.
Because she's not at the beach. So we've already established that one. If you want to go back and look at any of those slides in detail, which I'm sure you do, or if you want to share this with coworkers, colleagues, your boss, etc., you can do that in not too long from now at ballpublishing.com/webinars, the same place you signed up. And while there, check out both the other archives from all the webinars we've done in the past, and there's a couple more you can, at least one more, I think maybe 2 more, you can sign up for that I have coming up. I should have put a quick commercial in here because I have 3 more webinars on the next 3 Tuesdays. I will not be at the beach on Tuesday, I can tell you that. So that said, on behalf of Nancy and the folks at our sponsor, Syngenta, and all of my colleagues here at Ball Publishing who keep things going so I don't have to, I'm Chris Beytes saying so long, folks.